You and I have to look at this and understand this, that the ballot is as powerful as the bullet.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Hi, everyone. Tony Kern here, and welcome to Only Human. Today, once again, we've got a special guest, and I'll introduce him in just a moment. But for those of you who are first-time listeners or first-time watchers, Only Human is where we try to develop ourselves into being able to live our best life. And we identify the obstacles to doing so and hopefully provide some insights, tools, and techniques to help us overcome those obstacles. So today I want to bring in right away and not take up too much time philosophizing, Mr. D. Smith. And D and I have known each other for quite a while. D is I'm going to get this wrong, D, so correct me. You're the Executive Director of Safety Management for the Transportation Safety Institute. Did I get that close?
Close enough.
Close enough? And we're going to talk a few things about aviation safety today, and then we'll talk about a few other things that impact not only safety, but impact just about everybody. Most everybody knows here this is not a safety podcast or an aviation podcast, but that I view a lot of things in life through the lens of aviation and safety because that's where I come from. So let's begin, Dee, with letting you tell a little bit of your story, and more importantly, I think right now, the story of TSI. What do you guys do, especially in light of the recent accident at Ronald Reagan Airport, first one we've had in commercial aviation since, I think, 2009. So you guys must be doing a great job down there. Tell us a little bit about TSI and your role there.
Yeah, well, the accident's certainly been, the topic of discussion today for sure. So it is what we do. We train aircraft accident investigators and aviation safety professionals in all manners of aviation safety, from preventing accidents to actually investigating accidents. We have 6 now full-time accident investigators on staff. We do launch on accidents. This is not, the one that happened last night isn't anything that we would get involved in. It's too high in the political pull for us to be getting involved in it, but there'll be a lot of high rollers there that are interested in taking care of this one. But I can't tell you, almost 40 years in aviation safety, Tony, 29 years in the Army helicopter pilot, involved in safety in the military and in aviation safety and in, industry and private industry and in the airlines. Train a lot of airlines folks and do a lot in that regard. Study aviation safety, teach it, train it, live it. And I will tell you that what my opinion, we were due for this accident. I mean, there's been multiple incidents in the last year that were very close calls that got a lot of attention, that we tracked and we looked at a lot. And I see this happen all the time. I've probably seen that. This is probably the 4th iteration in my career in aviation safety. We have an accident, or we have some issues, or it's recognized that we're at risk in our public aviation safety domain. And what happens is get some more FAA inspectors out there, or beef up the training program, give some money to the airline so that they can train and they can enhance. Get some more air traffic controllers, build our infrastructure for safety. And then we go years and years and years without having an accident. And they say, you know what? Haven't had an accident in a long time. We don't need as many inspectors. We don't need as many trained air traffic controllers. We don't need as much money going into training. And then an event like this happens, and it's right back to the start of the cycle again. Let's beef everything up. And I think we were at the lower end of the cycle where we haven't had an accident in a long time, although there's been some really close indicators in the last year. By the way, I'm a huge believer in a process that was developed by a guy named H.W. Heinrich's theory of accident causation. For every catastrophic event that occurs, about 600 times the conditions were right for it to occur, but for one reason or another, it didn't happen. And the story I use for that is, somebody crawls underneath their vehicle with a jack. It's jacked up, and they're going to work on their muffler system. No chalk blocks, no secondary safety. They're definitely in position for an accident to happen. It was just the car jack, but many times they'll do that and they fix whatever's broke. They get out, they'll let the car down, it goes away. But one time they do it and the car falls on them. So 600 times the conditions exist, but every now and then everything just aligns perfectly and you have the perfect storm, and then we have an event like last night. I think it demonstrates a systemic defect in the way we're doing operations in the United States. It's not on either one of the pilots and either one of the aircraft or even the organization. I think it's systemic to our system, quite frankly.
It's fascinating. And for those of you watching, this will come out next Tuesday. So when Dee says last night, we record this on Thursday, I think the 30th of January or 2025. But, I agree with you wholeheartedly. How many near misses in the airport traffic area have we seen publicly in the newspapers in the last couple of years? Dozens.
Mm-hmm.
If I had a guess, I would have thought that this likely would have been a ground-based incident with somebody landing on another aircraft or taking off into another aircraft based on the similarities of the things that we've seen. But Lord knows we fly in tremendously congested airspace. There's new people everywhere in the cockpits, in the air traffic control towers, turning wrenches on the airplanes. We've known that we were in a high risk period for the last 5 or 6 years. But you're right. I mean, we've gotten so safe that it's led to, now, not in you and I, but I think in the industry at large, it's led to a degree of complacency that allows the systemic things to come in. Things like, well, we can now focus a little more on profit instead of protection. We don't need to train as much. We can accept a lower quality candidate. There's just 100 things systemically that can be worked and need to be worked. And it's just tragic that I don't know what the total number is, but 64 seems to be the number they're tossing around right now. Souls had to die for us to realize it again.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I've actually been down there to TSI a couple of times to instruct, and you guys hit a wide variety of people. I've seen folks from the government. I've seen private sector people there. How many people do you actually touch every year through TSI?
As far as the folks that attend training, or the people that we bring in to conduct the training?
No, the ones that attend.
Yeah. Somewhere between 25 and 2,700 a year.
Wow.
Is what we run through.
And how long have you been there?
I've been here 21 years now, believe it or not.
I can't do that math, but that sounds like about 40,000 people that have got your fingerprints on them out there in the aviation program, and that is something that is to be first of all recognized, and so thank you for that, Dee. I'm one of the people that have sat in some of your training, so I appreciate all your insights. Every time we talk, I learn something new. So
you're also one of our most valued contributors as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I always enjoy coming up to Oklahoma City. I used to say coming down to it, but now that I'm in Texas, it's north. Dee and I met many years ago. I can't remember the first one. Maybe, did we ever touch when you were in the Army still, or were you out before we bumped into each other?
I think it was shortly after I left the Army and started working here at Tony.
Yeah. And
it may have been. I may have still been in the Army because I was. Yes, I was. I was here as an associate staff or external contributor to training while I was in the Army, and so I believe I did meet you then. So.
Yeah, it's a pretty small world in aviation safety. I mean, the people who've been around as long as you and I have, probably count on uh, two hands, certainly, um, and to have a position with as much influence as you have, it's got to come with a lot of pressure and stress. Which brings me to another thing that I wanted to just toss around a little bit. A few years ago, I was on stage at, I think it was a Bombardier safety stand down. And, uh, and I don't know why, because this wasn't part of the presentation, but for one reason or another, I made it public that I suffer from depression, and that I've found some ways to work through that to be able to continue to do the things I do in spite of it. And so when I got off the stage, I wasn't sure about what I had said, whether it made any impact or whether it was just, I always critique myself right after I get off stage as to, did I go down any rabbit holes I shouldn't have? Did I spend too long on this topic and not enough on that topic? And I wrote that down. I remember writing the word depression, question mark, question mark. Like, I wonder if that was worth doing, because I didn't intend to do it, but sometimes my intuition works in strange, magical ways. And then I came off stage, and Dee came up to me, and I'll turn the story over to you from here, Dee, to let you tell me what you said to me there.
Sure. Well, of course, your presentation was good, as it always is, Tony. But I caught that. That was the most glaring thing that I caught in your presentation, and the reason it was meaningful to me is because I've got a fair amount of experience with depression, post-traumatic stress, and with myself and with others, and you're here you are, on stage in front of all these people, and you go ahead and bare your soul like that. And I was so appreciated the fact that you were, I'll say, man enough to stand up and say, hey, you know what? This doesn't just affect, that guy over there. We're all affected by this. In fact, it affects me. So I was very impressed that you took time to say that. And I promise you that I wasn't the only one in the audience that heard that, and that it had a positive impact on it. So your willingness to stand up and tackle that topic, and Lord knows it's a very difficult topic, personally difficult for me, really made a huge difference for me. And so I think demonstrated another aspect of leadership for Tony Kern.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't know about that, but I do remember going back that night when I was sitting in my hotel room and Xing out the question marks and saying, you need to look a little bit deeper into this. And so, I'll tell a little bit of my story and why it sort of bubbled out of me unplanned in that fashion in front of 500 people in Wichita, Kansas. I've suffered from depression. I think I first recognized it when I was 17 years old. Don't know where it came from. Frankly, don't care. Lots of people call it the black dog. I kind of like that because I like dogs. It just comes and goes with me. And when it comes, it can be overwhelming. And for those of you that don't suffer with depression, I'll do my best to describe my version of it. It begins with just a kind of a sadness, and then you begin to wonder, is anything you're doing really making a difference to anybody? Right? And then for me, especially when I was younger, not so much now because I've learned some techniques to deal with it, I would begin to, I didn't even know the word then, but I'm going to tell you the word, and it's a really important one. I would ruminate. Rumination is a repetitive, sometimes passive, but always present, focus on negative thoughts and problems. Right? I would think, I'm never going to be anybody. I don't deserve it. I can't work my way through things. and it's a pity party of one. And so you get into that thought cycle, and eventually you go, well, this sucks even worse. And then you just get down. You realize you can't think your way out of it. You can't act your way out of it. And so a lot of times you try to do other things, right? Well, I'm just going to get out. I'm going to go to a game. I'm going to have a couple beers. I'm going to do something. I'm going to do another. I'm going to get my mind off this stuff. And it doesn't leave right away, right? But here's the thing. Over the years, I've learned to embrace it. I am proud that I've been able to remain functional through these periods and even find utility in them. Now, when I begin to feel this, and it still happens to me, I start to go into my rumination. I tell the person that's most important to me, my wife, hey, I'm not feeling, I'm going to be focused on writing my book for a while. And I just go deep into one thing. Maybe I create a new course, or I just spend hours and hours reading or rereading a book that's helped me in the past. Not a self-help book, could be a book on anything, right? But I just take myself deeper in some direction. And that sort of solitude is really hard to get. And so I like to quote the old Paul Simon lyrics, "Hello, darkness, my old friend," right? I've learned to power through it, and not always coming out the other side re-energized and better, but always coming out the other side. So that's kind of how it is for me. I will say one other thing is, back when I was younger, no one talked about this stuff, right? Especially doing what I was doing. I was a captain of my college basketball team, and then I went into teaching for a couple of years, and then of course into the military, and then dealing with nuclear weapons and all that stuff. You did not talk about your mental health. It wasn't a manly thing to do, right? And so I just dealt with it, right? I dealt with it. The statistics I read just before coming on this podcast, Steve, was that 10 years ago, the number of people in America, don't ask me how they know this, that were suffering from anxiety disorder or depression was roughly between 14 and 18%. These are adults. The number today is 39.5%. So 4 out of every 10 adults in America, according to this study, now suffer from some form of depression or anxiety disorder. So I think talking about this is important, especially for people that have lived through it and lived with it. So anything you'd like to share on your story?
Yeah, well, I agree with everything you said, and so a few things that you said I find surprising. They're just points that you made that I wouldn't agree or disagree to. I think it's pretty cool that you mentioned them, and it'll give me a lot of thought for a lot of pause for thought. When we're done here today, but I 21 years ago, I was medically discharged from the Army after an injury in Iraq. And the first thing I said was I came in and said, you can't fly anymore. And then, and I thought, well, this is all a bunch of hoo-ha. Nothing's going to happen. And like 30 days later, I found myself with, a ticket pinned on my shirt that said, you're a civilian and get out of here. After the Army had been my career since I was 17 years old. And I, like you, had depression when I was younger as well, but I immersed myself in my job in the Army, and that really helped a lot. You're always busy. You always have the next carrot, where this is what we're going to accomplish. This is what we're going to do. How can I make it better? How can I be the best at doing that? And when I found myself on the street, I ended up, here in this, where I'm at here now with the Department of Transportation. And I remember I was sitting at a pub one night on a Friday night with a couple friends, and I'm like you. I'm in a dark time, and that was just the start of a long period of dark time for me. And there was a fellow with me, and he said, yeah, they were talking about a guy that had committed suicide. And I'm not saying anything. I'm just listening. And he said, I don't know what's wrong with that guy. He had everything to live for. He's got a nice wife and family and a nice house, and he had a good job. And all I'm thinking, I'm sitting there listening to him say that, and I'm thinking, you guys have no idea what this is, what this stuff is. I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with, with having a new car and a nice house and things like. I mean, those are really immaterial when you get to a dark point like that. That's not really, for me anyway. It isn't anything that would cheer me up, or that would get, break me out of it, But as time went on, a year and a half or so, I eventually found myself sitting in my garage on an old wooden chair with a gun in my hand, and and my wife was unknowing in the house. She knew there was something wrong with me, but she didn't know what. I didn't know how to tell her, what was wrong with me. I didn't want to anyway, like you said. It's embarrassing and it's not manly, and next thing you know, you're in a rubber room somewhere. At least that's my perception. And I didn't want to do that. And as I sat there, not really strong enough to commit suicide, I just really wanted to. But I just couldn't leave my kids that legacy. I have 3 boys and grandkids, and I thought, God, I just cannot leave this legacy to them. So I just have to live with this, I guess, and thank God I found an awesome lady who became associate staff here at TSI, Dr. Brenda Tillman, who deals with people like that. She was a godsend to me, But nevertheless, it still comes back to me. It's like it's like the tide in the ocean, and sometimes there's a hurricane, and then the water swell comes back, and it's even higher. Sometimes it just touches your feet. Sometimes it overwhelms you. But the one thing, and I know I've shared this with you before, and this is an important message for me. I'm getting goosebumps. So this is an important message for me to share with anybody who is in a place like that. I look back on the way I was when I was sitting there in the garage with that gun in my hand. And I think to myself, I am so thankful that I didn't take my life, because it got better and it gets better. And, it's like a point in time where that's the way you feel, but you can get past it, and you will get past it. And, and so I wish I could be right there when a good friend feels that way, to say, hey, listen, it will get better. I know it's terrible right now. I know it sucks. I know it doesn't feel like, it's worth being here, but it will get better, and you will feel better, if we power through it, or we try to power through it. I really don't think drugs are the answer. That's my personal passion. I'm not a doctor, so don't take my advice on that. Seek professional help, but I don't know.
I tell you what, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that story. And I took a couple of things out of it. I wrote it down as you were talking. You can't date or buy your way out of depression. You can't. Nobody's. It doesn't matter how nice your car is or how nice your home is. It's something different. And with regarding the drugs, I've done a lot of research on this. I know you have as well. For some people, that's exactly what's right, because there's something different. There's a chemical
Sure.
balance.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, the point you made, it will get better, is so critical, Dee, because you get to this down point, and I don't know what this is a fun podcast. I don't want this to get too heavy, but you do get to that point where it's like, shit, this really, really sucks, right? I'm just going to go to bed, and maybe you sleep, maybe you don't sleep, but you get up the next day, the sun comes up, and it's better. Sometimes it's a lot better. Sometimes it's just a little better, but it is better, right? And so, a lot of things, just techniques that I use. I told you the one is when I use my depression for creative work, right?
Right.
I think if you look at any of the really, and I'm not comparing myself to these guys except for the mental health part, you look at guys like Hemingway, right? You look at guys like Edgar Allan Poe. these were some sick puppies. I mean, you just know it, right? And I believe that in the depth of their state, they got creative and they did some incredible work. I think there's that piece, so that it's not lost time, right? So when I come out of it, I can look back and say, hey, that was progress, even when you were feeling so poorly, maybe especially because you were feeling so poorly. So that's really, really helped me find a way to make it a positive. The other thing, and this is all out there in the little self-help literature, but it works for me. I got to get up and move around, right? I have to get my body moving. And the more I sit on my butt or I ruminate in front of a TV set or with a book or something like that, it just adds to the spiral. So I got to get up and get moving. And then the second thing I'll say is if you keep moving long enough, day after day, you build a habit of fitness, and all of a sudden, you know what's going to happen? You're going to go from my shoulders were slumped, I was hanging my head, and you start to see and feel the benefits of routine, regular exercise. And you look in the mirror, and you get up and you feel a little pain in your triceps where you lifted yesterday, or in your hamstrings or whatever, and you say, "Man, I'm feeling pretty good today. I did yesterday, and it made a difference." So those are just little things that work for me. Any other thoughts on this before I move us back around to?
One other thing, Tony. I think it'd be wrong if I didn't mention this. I think that my faith also helps a lot and plays a big role in my perception and in the way I handle it. And I know you and I have talked a little bit about that in the past, and I think it's important, to have spiritual strength as well. So,
Absolutely. And if I'm willing to stand in front of a crowd and say that I suffer from depression, I'm more than happy to yell from the mountaintops that the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ has kept me alive and moving forward. So I make no secret of that either. I think in the overall society right now, we're seeing this trend toward more instability, which leads to mental health problems. And, I pick anything, with politics or the economy or, any hot button issue. And we have a group of electronic, I don't know what I would want to call them, criminals on all of the social media sites that are fanning the flames of our division to make us feel like we're actually engaged in life when all we're doing is shouting from an echo chamber at another echo chamber that's not listening, and getting madder and more frustrated and wasting more time with our lives. So for me, and I love that. I mean, I love that stuff. I'm a political guy, and I have a lot of thoughts on corruption in government and good government. Heck, I put this book right here, so it's always cheesy when an author holds up a book. I wrote this book a couple of years ago called The Ghost of Nathan Hale, A Renaissance of Citizen Engagement and Public Trust, because I spent several years in the federal government, as you well know, Dee. And while I'm at it, I spent the last couple of years, after two of my friends, former squadron mates, committed suicide in 2020 during COVID, writing Armored Night, which is this pursuit of resolve, resilience, and recovery from life's challenges. I always think it's cheesy when podcasters and speakers try to push.
Well, I'll put a plug in for your Armored Night process, Tony. I went through it, and it's very good, and had people here at work go through it. It was very helpful.
Well, I appreciate that, Dee. I put a lot of love into it. Like everything else you and I do, the minute it's done, you look back and you go, "Oh my gosh, I could have done that better." So we'll keep refining it, and we're fighting for feedback. Well, listen, as kind of we close up here, and I'll give you the last word in a second. I think that we started out by saying the goal of this podcast is to help people live their best life, and sometimes in order to be able to get to that perch where you can even begin to think about it, you got to stop living your worst life. And so we went into a fairly serious topic today, but I think both of us have had the opportunity to face this head on, and by being able to talk about it, even laugh about it, and share about it with some things that work for us. Hopefully, we can reach out and help somebody else as well.
Well, I mean, if you I don't know if you do this or not, Tony, but if you have an opportunity or people ask, I'm willing to visit and talk with folks. I've helped a lot of men. I lost my wife after 34 years of marriage. She was my high school sweetheart, and I like to help people. I like to help them, with any venture, especially. So I friends will call me and say, "Hey, my buddy such and such lost his wife. Can you call him and talk to him?" And we become good friends. I'd like to help anyone that I can. So in that regard, but I think, Tony, that you should have a joke on you should open or close your podcast with a joke every time. And so I have one today. I like the lighter side too. You know that.
Let's hear it, buddy.
So, well, I'll ask the audiences. I'll ask you and pretend it's the audience. So, how much does it cost a pirate to get an earring?
How much does it cost a pirate to get?
Yeah, to get an earring. A buccaneer.
That's a dad joke, man. I'm going to tell
It is.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up episode 67. Thanks again, D. We're here every week. We drop 9 a.m. Eastern time on Spotify or whatever platform you get your podcasts off of. So with that, live your best life, grow where you are with the resources at hand. Don't take any of it too seriously, and we will see you soon.